Another race and another dramatic shakeup around the Cup Series playoff bubble. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove Kansas Speedway Late Night Race Review Edition. Kansas Speedway, maybe with a little bit of help from the current rules package, in my opinion, has put itself at the top of the list as far as intermediate tracks in NASCAR goes. I can't think of any intermediate tracks, especially not any other mile and a halfs outside of maybe you can make an argument for Chicagoland, but I don't think so. Kansas, in my opinion, the last couple years has been the best mile and a half track, best intermediate track really of any kind on the NASCAR schedule, and it once again lived up to the hype tonight. Put on a whale of a show, a messy show at times, and we'll talk about the huge hit that Ryan Preece sustained on the inside wall on a late race restart. That was insane. We'll talk about some of the major incidents. We're going to talk about all the stories from tonight's race as we always do. We'll look at the top finishers, we'll talk about the winner, we'll look at the points, and of course at the end of this race I will put Kansas Speedway on the groovy gauge once again. But yeah, let's just jump right in. Let's talk about this race. A Thursday night race nonetheless. I hope you guys aren't clicking on this video being like, wait, there was a race tonight? There was a race on a Thursday? But it's probably inevitable because NASCAR doesn't usually race on Thursdays. They raced on a Thursday. The Cup Series raced on a Thursday earlier this year because a Wednesday race was rain delayed. But again, NASCAR has raced pretty much every day of the week, I think, at this point this season. So shouldn't be too surprised. Thursday night race at Kansas Speedway. Let's just jump in and talk about the top finishers because that's what I really want to spend the focus of this episode discussing. For the third race in a row, we didn't have a surprise winner, but the playoff bubble has been completely turned upside down. But before we talk about the points specifically, let's go ahead and talk about some of the top finishers. Denny Hamlin gets his series high 5th win of the season. He did not have the dominant car tonight. It was really hard to tell who, if anyone, really had the dominant car. A few different drivers spent time leading this race. Kyle Busch, in fact, actually won his first stage of the season, so he officially has a playoff point to his credit. But yeah, a lot of different drivers took turns leading. Tire strategy came into play, especially in stage 3, with certain drivers staying out, taking 2 tires. Penske cars, Hendrick cars leading laps as a result. But it was all said and done, of course, it was Denny Hamlin versus Kevin Harvick, and Brad Keselowski throwing his hat into the ring as well at the end of this race. The veteran drivers, probably the 3 top championship contenders based on what we've seen this year. Joe Gibbs, Stewart Haas, Team Penske, the 3 best teams once again tonight, basically from start to finish. But Denny Hamlin gets the win, like I said, his 5th of the season. I know a lot of people hyped up last season, especially with the results he had throughout the year, going into the championship race at Homestead. A lot of people thought that was Denny Hamlin's best year, best chance of winning a NASCAR Cup Series championship. He's only up the ante this year. 5 wins. Again, it's between him and Harvick for who's been the most dominant this season, and it's really nobody else close. I know the season still has a long way to go, but he has more playoff points to his credit than anybody else. That's going to be a huge boost getting him into the round of 4, hopefully. He got the win after he made a late race pass on Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick really seemed to have like an 8th place car all day long, but with a series of cautions, many wrecks, many fast cars running into issues. Kyle Busch, Ryan Blaney, who were both top 5 threats all night long, had flat tires late in this race. Blaney and Busch both got into the wall. With other drivers kind of falling out, Harvick was able to kind of snooker the 2 Hendrick young drivers, William Byron and Alex Bowman, not on the best of tires, did not get a great restart to end this race, and Kevin Harvick jumped all over him. So he led for a brief period, but it was Denny Hamlin who was able to run him down and take the win away. But you see Brad Keselowski also gets a top 3 finish there. And Martin Truex Jr. also snags the top 5 right there as well. If anyone did have the best car in tonight's race, I would say it was probably Martin Truex Jr., at least on the longer run, but never really got an opportunity to show it late in this race as restarts didn't always go his way. Also finishing in the top 5, perhaps most importantly, is Erik Jones. Erik Jones came into this race 19th on the playoff grid, about 24 points behind the cut line, but finishing top 5 and even collecting a couple stage points earlier in the race. Very important to the 20 team's playoff hopes. Eric Almirola keeps his top 10 streak alive. That team is on fire without a doubt. Cole Custer, a rookie, getting a top 10. Pretty awesome. As far as other playoff bubble drivers, Tyler Reddick ends up 13th, as you can see right there. Another driver on the outside looking in, trying to close the gap a little bit between him and 16th place. Not a great night for Clint Boyer, but he got what he could out of it. 14th place, salvageable. Salvaged an otherwise pretty awful night for the 14 team. They did not have speed really at any point in this race. So there are your top 20 finishers. I do want to focus now on the points because there are a couple of names that you don't see on this list. Most notably, Matt DiBenedetto, who was involved in one of those major crashes late in the race and suffered a lot of damage. Really was just wrong place, wrong time. But you also don't see Jimmie Johnson, who finished outside the top 30 tonight. Jimmie Johnson came into this race the last driver in the top 16, only 2 points to the good. Needless to say, after being involved in a wreck that also was not his fault, just wrong place, wrong time, he is well below the cut line. And Jimmie Johnson, 7-time champion, arguably the greatest NASCAR driver of all time, currently sits well below the playoff cut line in his final full-time NASCAR season. So let's look at the playoff bubble really quick. Clint Bowyer, like I said, salvaged his day and is still 42 points to the good, so a solid buffer for Clint Bowyer. He's likely not going to give all that up in one race. Matt DiBenedetto, though, he came into this race with a more than 50-point cushion. Being involved in that wreck, he now exits the race only 35 points to the good. And as you can see, William Byron, with a top 10 finish, has been able to jump his way back into the top 16. But the main reason he was able to do that is because Jimmie Johnson, as you can see, came into this race 2 points to the good. He leaves 18 points to the bad with 2 other drivers between him and the cut line. A catastrophic, really past several weeks for Jimmie Johnson. I can't think of really anything good that's happened to Jimmie Johnson in a long time. Wrecks, some his fault, some not his fault, like tonight. Obviously, the fact that he had COVID-19 and had to miss a race due to that diagnosis. So many bad things have happened to Jimmie Johnson the last few weeks. It's almost comical. I don't mean to laugh, but it's hard not to laugh at this point because it's just that absurd. This year was supposed to be Jimmie Johnson, like I said earlier, a Mount Rushmore NASCAR driver, arguably the greatest driver ever, the greatest driver to a large generation of fans. 7-time champion. This is supposed to be a send-off year. He was going to go to all these racetracks, perhaps for the last time, get to salute the fans. The fans were going to get to salute him right back. I was there earlier this season at California, which is technically his home track. The ceremonies before the race, the fact that they put him out front, let him lead the field before the green, the fan support was immense. That's what we expected to see for 36 races this year. And with the pandemic, things have just completely fallen apart for Jimmie Johnson. From the iRacing debacle, where Jimmie Johnson basically became the laughing stock of iRacing for a few weeks there, to now what's happened since the pandemic, just not good races. Wrecking at Darlington, wrecking from the lead, wrecking with good race cars. That just happens almost regularly at this point. Missing the Brickyard 400, a crown jewel event. It's just been catastrophic for Jimmie Johnson the last few weeks. He did not deserve to go out this way. I mean, he didn't. I mean, Jimmie Johnson's won a lot of races. I spent many formidable years of my life wishing Jimmie Johnson didn't win so dang much, but I feel bad for him. I just dropped my phone. My phone's trying to get away from all this negativity. I feel bad for Jimmie Johnson this year, and I don't see how you couldn't. He's not a bad guy. A little vanilla, a little plain, but he's a good enough guy. Like, nobody deserves to have their legacy sort of tarnished like this. Not saying this really does. I mean, everyone's going to remember the 7 championships, 5 in a row across multiple playoff formats, multiple generations of cars. People are going to remember that first and foremost, but gosh, this is going to leave a bad aftertaste in everybody's mouth if he doesn't make the playoffs this year, if things continue to spiral out of control. At this point, you know Jimmie Johnson's feeling the pressure. He may say that the pressure's not bothering him. He's going to go out there and race like he always does, but the pressure is surely getting to him at this point, and just the negative energy and the lack of momentum in general has to be hindering that team. Hendrick Motorsports doesn't have the speed they had at the beginning of this season. It sucks. I don't mean to dwell on Jimmie Johnson here. I've been rooting for Jimmie Johnson this year, guys. I really have been. I do not take any pleasure in watching him wreck out week after week after week. But man, at some point it's just hard to keep watching this every single week. I'm glad. I mean, I'm glad we have about 8 or 9 days off now between this race and the next Cup Series race, because I don't know, I think Jimmie Johnson's team especially just needs to take a deep breath. Just needs to get away from it all for a few days. Change the scenery, change something up. Just take some deep breaths, because there's still time to rally from this. They're only 18 points down. They can make that up in one race. They can obviously win a race. I mean, that's not completely out of the question. They're not out of this yet, but boy, oh boy, things aren't looking good for Jimmie Johnson, and it's a shame to see. Anyway, there are other drivers that I showed on that playoff cut line, other than Jimmie Johnson. Tyler Reddick, a rookie, trying to be the second RCR car to make the playoffs this year, with Austin Dillon locking himself in last week. That would be awesome for that team. It would be awesome for him as a rookie. Cole Custer's already locked himself in via his win a couple weeks ago at Kentucky. It'd be really cool if a second rookie was able to lock himself into the playoffs. I'm a big Tyler Reddick fan. I would love to see that. I'd also love to see Erik Jones make his way in. Erik Jones, a lot of drama around Erik Jones. He's in a contract year. They've reportedly began negotiations with JGR and with some of his sponsors, but nothing's been set in stone yet. And we'll talk about this in an upcoming episode. Levine Family Racing, the other Toyota team, sounds like their future is uncertain, which means JGR in general is going to have to make some very tough decisions. So Erik Jones, you got to believe he's, in a way, racing for his career right now, racing for his job. Top 5 tonight was really pleasant to see. I hope Erik Jones has a strong run, but there's so many drivers. I want Jimmie to make the playoffs. I want William Byron to make the playoffs. I want him to start to cement his legacy. I want Reddick to be in the playoffs as a rookie. That'd be great. I like Erik Jones. I want Erik Jones There's a lot of drivers I want to make the playoffs, but there's only 16 spots. And there's only a few of those spots still left up for grabs. So someone's going to be left disappointed. Maybe a lot of people are going to be left disappointed at the end of this regular season. It's going to be quite the playoff battle going down the stretch here. And I know what you guys are thinking. Why are we talking so much about Jimmie Johnson and Erik Jones? Like, even if they make the playoffs, they're likely not going to win the championship. I mean, let's be honest. Their performances does not indicate that they're going to make a championship run or anything like that. And you're right, but remember 2014, Ryan Newman didn't look like a championship contender all year. He came about the length of my front yard away from winning the championship that year. And also remember that just making the playoffs for some of these teams and for some of these drivers, the money that's involved, what it means for their sponsors, just making the playoffs and making it maybe to the round of 12 or round of 8 means an awful lot as well. So even though, yeah, the guy who makes it in 16th on the playoff grid will probably not win the championship this year, there's still something to watch. There's still something to root for and still something important at play there. Anyway, I do want to address a couple of the more spectacular moments in tonight's race. Kansas, like I said at the beginning of the show, has turned into probably the best mile and a half on the schedule. 4-5 wide on the restarts. It's a true multi-groove track, and you can thank the progressive banking for that. They didn't need any PJ1 out there tonight to run the bottom, run the top, run the middle, run anywhere in between, run basically anywhere that was paved. They could run tonight, and that's what created really good racing and plenty of passing opportunities, and also what created some horrific crashes. Most notably, you guys saw it in the thumbnail, Ryan Preece. Late in this race, when cars started wrecking around him, he got sent into the inside safer barrier wall. And I put the emphasis on safer barrier. Thank goodness that was there, because I tweeted this and I stand by it, because I've been racking my brain and a lot of you guys suggested other wrecks, but since I've been watching NASCAR, since about 2004, really started watching full-time around 2005, that's got to be the hardest, like, inside safer barrier wall impact I have seen. And I've seen some big ones. I think back to when Kyle Busch broke his leg at Daytona back in 2015 in an Xfinity car. That was a big hit. When Hamlin hurt his back in Fontana in 2013, a couple of y'all mentioned Jeff Gordon at, I think it was Las Vegas in 2008. That was another pretty big hit. But if you look at this Ryan Preece crash, the car almost flipped. The car almost tumbled as a result of this impact. That's insane. And the fact that Ryan Preece just hopped out of the car seconds later, angry, like, oh, I can't believe I got wrecked. Like, I can't believe that. I mean, I'm sure he's going to feel it in the morning. He's going to feel something for a few days. I mean, heat of the moment, I'm sure, adrenaline's pumping. You don't feel the pain right away. But I can't imagine he's not at least bruised or a little shaken up in some way after that, because that was, I mean, Kansas Speedway in recent years. I think back to Eric Almirola's incident a few years back, or I think even a couple years ago, you got like Suarez or Erik Jones, I can't remember who it was like on top of somebody in a playoff race here a few years back. Kansas Speedway, whatever the reason, has seen several massive crashes in recent years, but this one shook me the worst. I mean, the thing is, TV saw it the moment it was happening. You could see that car just torpedoing towards the infield wall, and you just saw the impact coming. I mean, it was one of those, I'm not one of those fans who, at least not when I'm watching at home, just like looks away when a wreck happens. Some people do. Some people see a car go out of control and they're like, oh no, I hope nothing bad happens. When I'm watching on TV, I'm usually glued to it, trying to see who makes it through the wreck, what happens next. Like, I mean, that's what I'm usually doing when a wreck starts. But in this case, when I saw Preece start careening out of the pack towards the inside wall, I was this guy. I was the, oh no, I know what's coming. And when he hit that wall and nearly flipped over, it wasn't quite the same feeling I got with Ryan Newman's impact at Daytona, which was obviously, as we see on the replay, was probably worse. But I held my breath for a few seconds there, because that was, for a mile and a half like this, like you just don't really see this coming. Like, that shook me quite a bit. That was shocking. But once again, a testament to the safety innovations over the last couple of decades, especially in NASCAR, from the Hans device to all the different things inside the roll cage to, of course, the safer barrier walls. I mean, I don't know how fast he was going when he hit. Probably 170 at least, I would guess. That's crazy. That is crazy that he walked away from that and seemed more or less okay afterwards. That's pretty wild. A lot of big-name drivers ran into issues tonight. I mentioned Kyle Busch and Ryan Blaney almost around the same time, both hitting the wall, both cutting tire down. Another just disappointing end to what was a promising night for Ryan Blaney. He's led so many laps this year, had so many race-winning cars, and he just hasn't won any of them. I mean, he won Talladega by, on that photo finish. He had to, door slam Erik Jones to do it, but he did win at Talladega. But man, he should have at least 2 or 3 wins at mile and a half this year, and he doesn't have any. And tonight was a Ryan Blaney mistake, it looked like. It looked like he just got into the fence a little bit there, and that's what messed up his tire. But you know, we saw tire issues affecting people all night long. Logano had a tire issue, caused a huge wreck. Matt Kenseth seemed to have a tire issue, it sounded like, on the radio, which affected Bubba Wallace's night. So there's tire issues galore. Newman had a tire issue. So maybe Blaney's was a tire issue, but it looked like Blaney, and same with Kyle Busch, looked like just the track was unpredictable. It is what it is. When you're running multiple lanes, you don't know what's going to happen every time you head off into the turn, and the cars were a handful tonight. NBC kept pointing out Blaney especially working the wheel with those white gloves. Dale Jr. loved those white gloves, so just another disappointing night for Ryan Blaney. I think he's a legit championship contender this year, but man, they just don't finish races, man. They just don't finish where they run, and a lot of times it's bad luck, but sometimes it's not. And I don't know, just disappointing, man. I want Ryan Blaney to win some races. Dang it. Anyway, we've covered a lot tonight. This race had a lot of storylines going into it. This race was a wild show. It was a great show, and I'm putting emphasis on the word show because I don't love tearing up as many race cars as we tore up tonight. Obviously, the impact with Ryan Preece was really scary. You don't want to see cars hit the wall that hard ever. So I put the emphasis on show because it wasn't the cleanest race in the world, but it was a wildly entertaining show. Let's put this thing on the groovy gauge and then let's get out of here. Tonight's race at Kansas Speedway, I wish I remembered what I scored last year's races at Kansas, because I remember the spring race, especially last year that Brad Keselowski won, was a phenomenal race. And this one gave me very similar vibes, but I'm afraid I'm going to score them wildly different. I don't want to appear inconsistent. Anyway, I'm going to give tonight's race at Kansas, I'm going to give it a 90% on the groovy gauge. I thought it was a very good race. Coming off a stretch of races at Texas, which I thought was a better than average Texas race, but still, you know, had its regular Texas issues. Races at Pocono, that doubleheader a couple weeks back. Indianapolis, not bad, but Kentucky. I mean, none of these races were absolutely terrible, but none of them got me out of my seat like tonight's race did regularly. Even the Bristol All-Star race was an okay race, but it wasn't as exciting as Bristol usually is. So tonight's race, I'm going to give it a 90%. It was a breath of fresh air. I had high expectations coming in to tonight, just given what we saw last year with this rules package, especially at night at Kansas. I knew tonight's race would feature multiple lanes of racing and would feature more passing than we're used to seeing on mile and a half these days, and I wasn't disappointed. We saw so much great racing, a lot of great racing, especially on restarts. This race was definitely helped by the string of restarts during the third stage of the race. Let's not kid ourselves. As with any package, restarts are exciting. Restarts are when the field's all bunched up, everyone's aggressive late in the race. Doesn't matter if it's the 2017 package, doesn't matter if it's the Gen 4 car, the Gen 5 car, doesn't matter if it's the current rules package. Restarts are always exciting. That's why when you go to a race, fans stand up and get out of their seat for the restarts. Then they sit down during the green flag runs, because that's just when you hang out. People get excited for the restarts for a reason. And tonight at Kansas, restarts were absolutely unreal. Leaders would stay side by side for 3, 4, 5 laps. Meanwhile, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th place were 4 and 5 wide for entire laps. I mean, it was unreal. Looked like Daytona or Talladega at points in tonight's race. That was insane to see. Tire strategy was great because, while, you know, it wasn't a ton of tire wear, it was more than Texas last week, so that's why you saw guys like William Byron take risks by staying out and not taking as many tires. We saw risks early on that worked out better for some than it did others, so I like that there was a real strategy component to tonight's race. Overall, can't really say much bad about this race. I'll give it a 90% on the groovy gauge. I had a lot of fun watching it. Kansas is becoming one of my favorite tracks. Like I said at the beginning of the show, it's one of the few mile and a halves that I actually look forward to on the schedule right now, and it didn't let me down tonight. Let me know what you guys thought of tonight's race down in the comments below. But that's all I've got. Thank you all for watching this video. As always, subscribe if you are new. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, and of course, a big thank you to my amazing Patreon supporters. You guys, the reason I'm able to do this show almost daily at this rate, I should have another kind of special, kind of unique video. I'm trying something a little bit different. Should be up tomorrow afternoon, and I greatly appreciate the support from all of you on Patreon. Helps keep the channel going, so thank you very much. Video hopefully up tomorrow. I also have a thing to announce tomorrow, so keep an eye on your Twitter feeds, keep an eye on the YouTube posting community tab page, whatever it is. I'll post it everywhere, but I got a special live stream planned for this coming Sunday here in just a few days. Since there's no cup race, I figured we'd have some fun over here, so keep an eye out for that. I'll have more to announce tomorrow, but thank you all for watching this episode. I'll see you all again very, very soon. Take care, everyone.